Seventh Floor Show. I'm Tanner Rebello. Alongside me today is Justin Doyle. Justin, how are you today?
Pretty good since the first day of hockey season.
Yeah, no, it is. And you'll be hearing this on Thursday. Or if anybody's been noticing, I've been releasing it like Wednesday nights, late Wednesday nights. So it's up there on Wednesday nights. But Thursday is the first Boston Bruins game of the year. They're playing the Nashville Predators, a team that made it to the Stanley Cup Finals this past year, but were defeated by the Pittsburgh Penguins. So you're seeing an interesting hockey game to open up the year. There's going to be a lot of concerns, injury concerns with this game and with this team to start the year. And it's unfortunate. Guys like Patrice Bergeron and David Backes, who are active and on the roster, might not be able to play in the game. We'll talk about that a little later. Torrey Krug and Austin Czarnik will not be playing in the game. They're on IR. I know Krug has been skating with the team last couple of days in practice, but I think it's October 14th or something like that he could potentially return.
I mean, he's been skating with that jaw protector thing that the guy.
Right, he is still a considerable amount away here from being able to play in a hockey game. Which it's unfortunate to start the year like that, but it gives opportunities to other guys. I think the main concern right now is Patrice Bergeron and the injury to him. He left practice, what 2 or 3 days ago now, and now he's day to day. Missed practice today on Wednesday, and with the game on Thursday. I mean, my in terms of where I am with him, my worry meter with Patrice Bergeron, I'm fairly concerned. This is the second straight year where he's opened up the season with some kind of injury. He's a pretty tough guy. So if this was an important game, if this was a playoff game or a game that you have to win, Bergeron's going to be out there to start, that game. But I don't envision him playing on Thursday to open up the season. And the reason I am under that impression right now is some of the comments you heard from Cassidy today on Wednesday was more of the lines like, we're not going to rush Patrice Bergeron back. We want him healthy.
Yeah,
they're going to take their time with him, and it makes sense, and they should.
Give him an extra day since it's only game one. There's really, I mean, obviously you want to win every game, but I mean, if you lose, it's not like the end of the world. You don't want to have Bergeron be hurt for us this season because you tried to play him too early.
Right. And that's definitely something that they need to be cautious of. I think Bergeron will ultimately be fine. This isn't something too serious. This isn't something too serious right now with him, so I'm not worried about it. But it still is slightly concerning to open up the year with some kind of injury with Bergeron because he is a pivotal player on your team. Talking about David Backes, you want to give us some information on the Backes injury, Justin?
I believe he was just said to be. Here it is. He was said to be under the weather. So take that however you wish. Maybe he just got a little like a bug. I don't know, but I guess he was told to just stay home today instead of practicing. So that makes me sound like he should be back and ready to go tomorrow. But you never know. Maybe they're just kind of saying it because they're still unsure.
Right.
But hopefully it was just kind of like, maybe he had some bad hot wings.
Who knows? Who knows really what's up with David Backes? Kind of an interesting guy to talk about because he's going to be on that third line with Ryan Spooner and Matt Bolesky is what they've been running in practice, which I think is baffling to me that they're still trying to do this with Ryan Spooner and still trying to have David Backes on the wing and Matt Bolesky. The fact that they're trying to run that as a third line kind of scares me a bit. I thought if you kept Jacob Forsberg-Karlsson up here, that would have been a better feeling for me. I would have rather went really young in that third line. Maybe Frank Vetrano would be on that line. I'm just not too sold with Ryan Spooner, and I think this is it for him. I think they're overpaying him. They're overpaying Matt Bolesky. Obviously, they're overpaying David Backes. So that third line's very expensive for this team to run. I just don't see much out of Ryan Spooner that makes me say, wow. I don't think he's warranting that third line centerman spot. Granted, with JFK, if you had him up here, you probably would want him to be getting top 6 minutes in terms of developing him in his career. So in Providence, he will be a top 6 forward. Probably be on the top line down there. So he's going to get the minutes to develop. But I would have liked to see them go all in this year. And the fact that they held on to pieces like Ryan Spooner and Matt Bolesky do worry me a little bit. And I still think they have no idea what to do with David Backes whatsoever.
You're not going to like this, but I read that Ryan Spooner was actually centering that first line in place of Patrice Bergeron at practice today. So he just got bumped up 2 lines.
I,
I mean,
if Bergeron's
obviously,
out, who do you put it? All right. So if
obviously
Bergeron's out,
becomes a first line, then
right. Well,
second line.
that's always been the case, though, Justin. I mean,
Yeah.
it's always been the fact that you've said, well, you have Krejci and Bergeron as your top two centers, and it's been like that for years.
Mm-hmm.
And those two lines were interchangeable. Sometimes they'll throw out their second line, quote unquote, second line with Krejci as the starting line. So it doesn't really matter
It's all matchups.
to that point. But if Bergeron's out for an extended period of time, who do I want centering Brad Marchand and Anders Burke? I
David
don't want it
Backes.
to be Ryan Spooner. If
David
you have
Backes.
Ryan Spooner with that team, that line, it's going to be way too fast, way too reckless, and there's going to be no accountability, no veteran presence there. I mean, obviously Marchand. I think I said Pastrnak. It's Marchand.
Yeah, it's Marchand.
But it's too fast, too loose, and it should be David Backes. He should be the guy there. He has familiarity at the centerman position, and he was an all-star for many years at that position. So I think it should be him, and the fact that they're putting Ryan Spooner in there does concern me a little bit. If that's the case, opening night, Ryan Spooner is going to be with those two guys. I'd puke. That's not good.
And I think it's Corrali was taking Spooner's
They
spot.
like Corrali a lot, actually. I haven't seen enough of Corrali that
I like him.
totally bought in on him yet. I'm kind of on the outside with him. I have to see him play more, obviously. But from what I've seen and what I've heard from the Boston Bruins is that they really like this guy. And a lot of the media members also seem to like Corrali. I'm actually not so sure why. He's 24 years old. Looking at right now, he's 6'2", and let's take a look at his stats really quick. 4 games. Was last year he had 2 goals.
Not much
8 games
anymore.
played in total in the regular season last year. He had an assist, which was 1 point, and he had a -1. Which isn't a big deal. So that the 2 playoff goals is something big, obviously. I just haven't seen enough of him. 2011 5th-round pick for San Jose. He's a left shot centerman. I'm just not sold yet on him. I don't know. I just haven't seen him play enough to really go all in on him. And I thought he was one of those fringe guys for this team. So I definitely need to see more of Sean Corrali, but there's a lot of players I say that about right now with this team, and that's kind of what makes them interesting is you have so many guys who are like, wow, I really need to watch him more. I need to see more of him.
That's the kind of team they are this year. I don't really want to say it, but it's a rebuilding year.
Wouldn't you have rather have them go even younger?
At this point, yes.
I would like to have O'Gara make the team.
Why not?
I would rather have seen I know JFK giving him that time down in Providence is going to be worthwhile, but the fact that guys like Matt Bolesky and Ryan Spooner are guys who in theory have seen their potential. Spooner, there might be something there. Maybe the first full year under Cassidy here, he's going to be able to show something because obviously he didn't really fit the way Claude wanted to play. And he wasn't a favorite of Claude. So maybe you're going to see something from Ryan Spooner here. Maybe you'll see him explode, have that career year, because he certainly needs it. But Matt Bolesky, I think you've seen enough from him where you kind of can tell, this guy plays hockey. He's a hockey player. But other than that, not really much there. And there's a lot of other guys you can get that production from. What I've been disappointed in is Frank Vetrano, to be honest. Last year, obviously, the injury hindered him, and that's why I think he had a down year. But the fact that he hasn't really shown anything in camp or in preseason to warrant a higher line concerns me. And this was a guy I was really high on 2 seasons ago. This was a guy who could take the puck from his own end, skate all the way to the other end, and score, and maintain control of the puck the entire way. And this was an exciting guy to watch. And that was 2 seasons ago when the Bruins weren't that exciting. And this was this young, fast forward who could skate, who could shoot, who could score. And I've been disappointed on him. And I think this is going to be a big year for him as well, in terms of actually, this is it. You got to show something now or we're going to move on. And the fact that he's on the 4th line right now in practices and in preseason, disappointing to me because I don't think he's going to get a fair opportunity on that 4th line.
Yeah, I don't think so. He's got to be on at least the 3rd line. Like
right,
said,
and I think that's where he should
I'm
be.
disappointed in him too. And
I think
he looks good. Nothing's clicked. I don't know what else to say other than he just hasn't played to what.
I will say it this way: the Bruins' 4th line as it sits right now, is going to be better than the third line if you're going to have Ryan Spooner and Matt Bolesky on it.
Oh, probably.
Right. And I think you will see Cassidy in key situations go to that fourth line more than he goes to the third line. And the interesting thing here is David Backes, because he is a veteran hockey player, but last year he was incredibly disappointing as well.
Oh,
In fact,
extremely.
so I think they paid him an incredible amount of money, and the expectations were set high upon him. They didn't put him in a situation to succeed. But going into last season, I didn't expect that much of David Backes because I expected him to be your third line center.
Mm-hmm.
The fact is, he played wing. For some reason, he's still playing wing.
Really?
It's very confusing to me because obviously you don't want to pay your third line center what $6 million per season.
That's ridiculous.
You don't want to do that, but that's where he's succeeded in his career. That's what made him an all-star player. And the Bruins, for some reason, in their head, looked at David Backes and said, "This guy can play the wing." And it's like, well, in theory, yes, but would David Krejci play well in the wing?
No, that
Would Patrice Bergeron play well in the wing?
I don't think.
You all-star centers usually transition into a wing role. No.
No.
Usually an all-star player who is an all-star at his position doesn't transition to another position. And I'm not really sure what they were thinking. Because when they signed him, they had Krejci, they had Bergeron locked up to an extended term.
The thought was trade Spooner, and then back to
Right. Now,
Spooner.
but then you would have paid $6 million for your third line center at that point.
Yeah, but it's still better than paying $6 million to put a center on the right wing.
No, no shit. Yeah, that's definitely true. And they ended up re-signing Ryan Spooner.
Yeah.
I just don't
know what's
get it.
going through their heads. I guess. Maybe
I
they
don't
think
get it.
one
So
last
as
chance,
much
too.
credit as we give Don Sweeney for his drafting and development and bringing in these young players, you have to also look at him and say, "Wow, this guy he's very Peter Chiarelli like when it comes to signing players to extensions and free agents, and his only big free agent signing as GM of the Boston Bruins is his Backes contract. So you can look at that and be like, wow, that was really bad. And then you look at his trading record and look up and down. It hasn't been horrible, but it hasn't been great either. And now we can look at Malcolm Subban and say, wow, what a missed opportunity there. What were you doing? You protected Malcolm Subban from the Vegas Knights. Malcolm Subban, it blows my mind. This was a former first-round draft pick, obviously drafted by Peter Chiarelli. We lost Colin Miller, a good young defenseman, a 23-year-old defenseman who showed that he has talent. And you lost him to Vegas. When Vegas had a lot of interest in Malcolm Subban. So you're telling me there couldn't have been a deal there? Some kind of trade that could have worked out to protect Colin Miller? I mean, other teams did it. There's other teams that made trades with the Vegas Golden Knights to avoid them from taking a certain player. There wasn't a trade there where they would have been like, hey, we'll give you this piece and you take Malcolm Subban. No, you could say, all right, the Bruins, they still didn't want to give up on Malcolm Subban. So at that time, they must have valued Malcolm Subban higher than Colin Miller.
Correct.
If that's the case, then I'm like, okay, I get your line of thinking. You valued one player over the other. That makes sense. But in reality, if you looked at the track record of Malcolm Subban, where you projected him to be, and then looked at the track record of Colin Miller, where you projected him to be, I think the average Bruins fan, an average person who knows hockey, would look at it and say, well, actually, we value Colin Miller higher than Malcolm Subban at the moment.
Oh, absolutely.
Because there hasn't been enough hockey played since that draft to make you say otherwise, in my opinion. So now you're walking away from Malcolm Subban, and you actually just signed another goaltender yesterday to your organization. So you moved on from Malcolm Subban, put him on waivers, and maybe you were like, oh, okay, he's going to go to Providence. But Vegas had interest in him, and you lost Colin Miller, a 23-year-old defenseman that played pretty well for you. I just think Sweeney, for some reason, he gets a lot of the young stuff right, bringing in young players. A ton of young players and guys like Jake DeBrusk, Anders Bjork, who are going to be in the top 6 roles to start the year. But on the other hand, he's not a full GM.
He
He's
wasn't
not good
starting
at all
for
the
a reason.
aspects. He only seems to be good at bringing in young players, which is that's the way they're going. But you have to do other stuff well, and you can't be an idiot. And there's so much money tied up into these couple of players where it's limited you, and it's going to limit you in the future because you have a lot of money tied up into a couple of players. And that's going to really hinder your ability to re-sign players and sign free agents because this past offseason, even if the Bruins wanted to bring in somebody, they couldn't afford to because they've kind of locked themselves up into a cap jail right here. And this is
Yeah,
a
I mean
game I love to play.
they
This
only
is
have
a
like 1.5 million of cap, I think, plus or minus a little bit. So you could get like maybe a third line guy.
no, they have $270,000 in projected cap space.
Oh,
So I love. All right.
even
So when
less.
Peter Chiarelli was the GM in Boston, one of the things I love to say, all right, where did Peter waste our money? And it looks like Don Sweeney has been a very good student of Peter Chiarelli because you have 2.8 million going towards Ryan Spooner. You have Matt Bolesky, 3.8 million for the next 3 seasons. Next 3 seasons, he's 29 years old.
Seriously?
He has a modified no movement trade clause here.
Wow.
Modified no trade clause. $3.8 million per season the next 3 years. He's playing on your third line, and he should be on your fourth line based on his production. Ryan Spooner, $2.8 million. He is your third line centerman. But you also have another third line centerman in David Backes, who's getting paid $6 million per season every year until the 2020 season. So the
Spooner
next 4 years
isn't
at David
terrible.
Backes.
The Spooner contract isn't terrible, but what tops it off is the fact that you're also paying Backus that much to almost be like the same.
Right.
guy, but
Let's
better.
talk about Brad Marchand too. 29 years old, 6.125 million per season.
8 years.
And look, he's a great player now. He's 29. Next year, 30. Year after that, 31. Year after that, 32, 33, 34, 35. You're paying him obviously with the cap projected to go up, but the facts are the facts. The NHL cap hasn't actually gone up as much as people expect. Every year, what do you hear with the cap? Oh, it's
Going
not
up?
going to it's going to go up. And then what happens when it comes to that time for it to go up?
It goes up like $1.
Incremental, right? And that kind of screwed the Bruins over this year because they thought they had more cap to work with here.
Definitely.
And I think they were talking to Patrick Sharp, according to what Cassidy admitted. Like, yeah, I thought we had Patrick Sharp locked up.
Right in Chicago.
Right, and then he went back to Chicago, right? So if you look at some of the money tied up, that's just the forward group we're talking about. Ryan Spooner, overpaid. David Back is overpaid. Matthew Bolesky, overpaid. David Pastrnak, all right, that's a good number, I think. Bergeron, obviously, 32 years old, multiple years here, but all right, you're not going to complain. David Krejci, overpaid, but when you signed him up, he was one of the best centers in the league.
Yep.
Was he 7.2 million? Even at the time, I don't think he was 7.2 though. I think even at the time of the contract, when he was in his prime,
A little too much.
I think even at that time, it was overpay. Moving on to this defensive unit, I think we did this on like the first show, but looking at the defensive unit, Torrey Krug, $5.25 million for the next 3 seasons, which, in 3 seasons, he'll be 29. That's fine, but that's a little bit of an overpay for a guy who is a third pairing defenseman.
Should be $4 million.
Chara, $4 million, fine. Adam McQuaid, 2.75.
Fine.
Yeah, considering he's playing the same amount of minutes as Torrey Krug, essentially. Kevin Miller, $2.5 million. That's okay.
Fine.
Rask, $7 million.
Ridiculous.
Fine. That's actually fine though, because
It is.
it's
For
top
what you
five
get out of
in the
him.
top 5 in the league in terms of play, and top 5 in the league in terms of payment.
According to NHL Network.
Right, right, right. But I think when you look at Rask's number, you're like, all right, that's fine.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think that's fine.
There's just like, those 3 or 4 guys that just are overpaid. But I feel like you're going to have that on every team.
Oh, you will.
But
But
the Bruins
the
have
Bruins
like 1
have
or 2 extra guys.
Yeah, the Bruins. All right, exactly. So David Backes, that's a big free agent signing you had, $6 million per season. You didn't have a spot to put him. It's confusing because there was no spot to put him. So I think that contract, but I think they needed grit too, and there's other factors that go in. He's a gritty veteran. I like the way he plays. So I look at Backes and I think that's an overpay, but it's like, all right, I get what you were trying to do there. Matt Bolesky, I don't really get why they did that. But then again, we're a couple of years removed from that. So if you remember, they were an old veteran minded team at that point.
The idea was to replace Lucic with him.
Yeah, I think
And put
that's
him
what they
with
were
Krejci.
initially thinking, right?
With the power forward with Krejci, because he had Horton, and Lucic, Horton, Yager. Um, yep, the other guy that he had too, the
So
Ginla.
why did they re-sign Ryan Spooner? I mean, I know he was an RFA and all of that,
I have no
but
idea.
uh, he's 25. Okay, should be in his prime right now. 2.8 million RFA at the end of this year as well. So they're probably going to re-sign him again.
I should have let him go.
I would have let him go because Riley Nash could have been your third line centerman. If you were really dead set on even David Backes on your wing, you could have had Riley Nash at the center position there. You could have had JFK at the center position. You could have had Zarnik.
Yeah.
You could have had. There's a ton of guys on your team that could have played center, and I
Or
haven't
Backes.
seen Ryan Spooner. Yeah, David. You have a guy who actually was an all-star a couple times out on the wing there. Um, you know, it's interesting the way they manage their cap, and let's look at a team that has won a couple championships here. What team has won a couple championships, Justin?
I'm going to say the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Right. So I'm taking a look at them right now. And obviously, no one can see that, but you can go on capfriendly.com is where I use to look, and I'm looking at their cap. So they have a Evgeny Malkin. Do you know how much he's getting paid? Holy shit. My Lord.
9 million.
9 million, $9.5 million.
Nailed it.
That's a crazy number. So he's their highest paid player, which is actually.
Crosby?
Oh, yeah, absolutely insane. Sidney Crosby, $8.7 million. But if you look at those players and you look at the championships they've won, I think that's fine. But then you move down, you have Phil Kessel, $6.8 million.
He's been helping for them.
Right, that's been good for them. Patrick Hornquist, $4.2 million.
That's fine for them. He's been solid.
Carl Hagelin, 29 years old, $4 million. But if you look at the guys here, so if you're looking at the Pittsburgh Penguins, their top three forwards in terms of payment all make sense.
Yes.
Right. And if you look at the Bruins, you look at David Krejci, he's the highest paid centerman, and at the time, I think it was even an overpay. But then you go in, and it's just interesting when you look at that team. But then you look, so they have three guys here. You have Malkin, Crosby, Kessel, all making over $6 million. The Bruins, you have more guys than that. You have David Krejci, you have David Pastrnak, Brad Marchand, David Backes, Patrice Bergeron. You have 5 players on the Boston Bruins forward group that are making over $6 million per season. And if you go to the Pittsburgh Penguins, a team that wins multiple championships, they have 3. You have 5. That's bananas.
That's why it's so hard for them to make the roster.
But going down to the defensive group, they spent a little bit more than you. Crystal Tang's getting paid $7.25 million per season. Nice. That's basically what Chara was getting paid, though, in that ballpark up until this season.
That's a top 2 defender price.
Yeah, Justin Schultz, $5.5 million. So you're talking close to that number that you're giving Krug. Well, let's talk about their goaltending core here. 23 years old, Matt Murray, $3.75 million per season. That's great.
Helped them win a cup.
Yep, it did. So that's, if you look at the Pittsburgh Penguins team, and they have $2.6 million available in cap, and they're contending for another Stanley Cup this season, and that $2.7 million is going to allow them to then go after a free agent or make a trade deadline acquisition and take on cap. So they have that luxury to do so. The Bruins are obviously a completely different team, but if you're looking at a championship contending hockey team, that's what they are. The Bruins aren't that in terms of their cap. They're not even at that level. Let's talk about the Nashville Predators, the team that made it to the Stanley Cup Finals this past season, and defensively are way better than you. Their top 4 for Nashville is better than anything Boston has. The fact that PK Subban, who's getting paid $9 million per season, is actually probably the 3rd or 4th defenseman on that team is outrageous. But they have $5 million in cap, $5.3 million the Nashville Predators have for cap space this year.
I hope them like Fisher retired.
Right. Of course, but $5 million though.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. The highest paid forward in that group is Ryan Johansson. You have Forsberg making. Forsberg's only 23 years old. $6 million per year.
Yeah, that's insane.
But if you look at that group, that's another team that was in the Stanley Cup, $5.3 million in cap. So I just think there's been some mismanagement by the Bruins, and we obviously knew that when Peter Chiarelli was the GM, the mismanagement. But I think Don Sweeney has learned a couple things from old Peter and has kind of transitioned them, unfortunately, to this Bruins team because they have handed out contracts that are Peter Chiarelli-esque. I want to know who's to blame here, though, Justin. Who's
I
ultimately to
don't.
blame?
Yeah, I mean, technically, I guess you could probably say Cam. Doesn't
Cam,
everything have to go through him first?
Cam. Look, so
Or he's the last. He's like the last defense.
yeah, but
Like
you
you
think if
could
they're
say,
giving out, if they're handing a $6 million per year contract out to David Backus,
he's like
they're
Sweeney. No,
talking to
that's
Cam.
stupid. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Cam has to do that kind of stuff. But if they're handing out a re-signing to Noel Chari or Austin Zarnik, I think, yeah, Don, you can do that yourself.
Yeah.
When you're paying a player $6 million per, or the David Pastrnak contract, which I think was a fine contract. Actually, I think that
And
was a good get for them. Give them a pat on the back for that, and then punch them in the face for the Backus one. It can be both ways. It can have good days and bad days. The Backus one was confusing. And I believe that happened on like the first day of free agency, but in the NHL, you do need to get in the first day. Or like the NFL, the first day is where you overpay. The NHL, you just have to get in on the first day or you miss them.
Pretty much.
Or you can be the Calgary Flames and get an absolute steal by signing Yadimir Yager to your team. Thank you for bringing Yager back to the NHL.
Thank God.
He should play as long as he wants.
One last year.
I know we talked about it, I think, you and I at some point, that the Bruins should have considered Yager bringing him back just to play with David Krejci. Because, we've all been under the impression that Krejci's decline here is not just hip related or injury related. It has to do with the fact that they never put him in that right position since they traded Milan Lucic. He lacks that true power forward on his wing. I think David Pastrnak's going to have a good year, but I also wonder if Krejci is going to be the right centerman for him long term.
I mean, they had good chemistry in the past.
They did. No, they have. No, I admit that for sure. I think I admit that Pastrnak and Krejci have shown chemistry in the past, but I look at the two speeds, and Pastrnak is on a different planet. He truly is.
He is.
It's like the Roadrunner and the Coyote, if you think about it, where one's just running 1,000,000 miles a minute, and Krejci's a slug, or the Rabbit. I think there's good chemistry there, but I do question the long-term longevity there. I think Krejci has been put in a bad position by the organization ever since they traded Lucic. And I think they should have, I don't know if it was going to be Yager, but I looked at Thomas Vanek as another possibility that could fit there. And I thought that Matt Bolesky was going to fit there, and he ended up not working out. David Backus is a guy who I think could, in theory, transition into a good wing with Krejci, but David Backus is, like I said multiple times on this show, an all-star centerman, and his first instinct is to pass the puck, which is fine, but that's why he was a center. And David Krejci would have an empty net in front of him and would still pass the puck. So
yeah,
so really great there. But you know what, Justin? Since I've started this podcast, people have been asking me for advice, and it comes to betting advice and what team I'm going to bet on this week. Do I have the Bruins, or am I betting the Nashville Predators? Am I going to bet on the Pittsburgh Penguins, or am I going to bet on Detroit? Well, let me tell you this. Where you're betting at is just as important as where you're betting on. So that's why I always tell people to go to mybookie.ag and use the promo code TRIFECTA. You get a 100% deposit bonus. There are all kinds of online sports books out there. Mybookie.ag is the only one that gets me my stamp of approval. And I don't give that out lightly. To get my endorsements, I have to go to personally actually use the service. That means that has to be the best. And MyBookie.ag is by far the best sports book that I've used online, and I've used them all. MyBookie.ag has been in business for years, and their rep is rock solid. They do 100% cash bonuses. So off that, you're making money for doing nothing. You bet $10, they're going to give you $10 on top of that. So that's $20 in betting money. Basically free cash. And they have the fastest payouts. Seriously, just 2 business days to get paid out. It's no different from betting in a glitzy casino, but you can do it right from your smartphone. Trust me, go to mybookie.ag to place your bets and tell them I sent you. Use the promo code TRIFECTA. Get over there and get the best odds anywhere. Anywhere, Justin.
I'm not a betting man. I'm not a betting man, but that sounds pretty fun.
But if you were, you'd use mybookie.ag and use the promo code TRIFECTA. 100%.
I probably would.
You probably would.
If I had any money to bet, I probably would
But
do
they
that.
give you free money, Justin. You put $10 in. You put any amount in, and they give you that money.
Yeah, see, I can't do that because I just bought a $900 phone.
Yeah, if you see Justin sitting on a nice fancy chair there, yeah, nice and
It's
fancy.
actually a knockoff, but
It's not though. So yeah, the Bruins are opening up the season
there's a
against the
lot of
Nashville
question marks on
Predators.
the roster.
What's that?
A lot of question marks on the roster. Who's
Oh
going
yeah,
there?
no, tons of question marks on their roster. I have the roster open right in front of me. Noel Chari's on the roster. Backus, Bolesky, Bergeron, Anders Bjork. Austin Zarnik is on the IR. Jake DeBrusk will be playing with David Krejci. I'm sure a nice young fast player will fit in just nice with David Krejci. Oh, was that sarcastic? Shit. Sean Corrali's on the roster. Brad Marchand, Riley Nash, David Pastrnak, Tim Schaller, Frank Vetrano. So if you're looking at like the guys who are fringe players, quote unquote fringe players, Tim Schaller made it. Sean Corrali made it. Vetrano, I think, was a
Atari.
fringe player. He made it. They didn't trade Bolesky. Did not move on from Ryan Spooner. Achari made the roster. DeBrusk is still on the roster. Bjork is still on the roster. And those are the two guys, like DeBrusk and Anders, were the two guys that at the beginning of camp, like the first day, you heard Cassidy say, right. But they were also, Cassidy was plugging him in on the top six, both of those forwards. And guess what? They're still there.
Yep.
They're still in the same position they were to start camp, which to me is fantastic news. But it could be them doubling down, right? It couldn't be just the performance, but it's them doubling down. Like, we need to go young.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what happens.
It's a little of both, but I think it's more that they've shown that they're ready.
I think so too. I would hope the Bruins wouldn't put them out there if they weren't like sold on it, because that'd be putting in a player in a situation that setting up to fail, right? You don't want to set them up to fail. So I think they are ready. Defensively, I am a little worried about this unit right now. Carlo.
Oh, you're saying the actual defense.
The actual, yeah, right. So like, okay. Well, yeah. So if Bergeron's out, yeah, your forward group's deep. But I'm talking, yeah, the actual defense of the team. Although the forward group's defense is going to be pretty bad if Bergeron's out for an extended period of time.
Oh yeah.
Oh, they're atrocious. Just David Pastrnak doesn't know how to play in his own end. Brad Marchand can't play. Like
4-time Selkie winner, so you're obviously going to be slacking.
Right, but your forwards aren't supposed to play defense unless you're Patrice Bergeron, and then you play every facet of the game. And if they need you to play goal, you're going to do that too.
He has in the past.
Yes, he has. So looking at the defensive unit here, I think you have some question marks for sure. Brandon Carlo, I feel confident about defensively. Zdeno Chara, I do. Matt Grzelcyk, who I think is only on the team because Torrey Krug is on the IR. But Matt Grzelcyk, if you watched him play and if you're a fan of college hockey, you definitely have seen him play.
He's like Krug, but
he's not like Krug. He is Torrey Krug. He might look a little bit different number, but he is Torrey Krug.
Same play style.
Yeah, he's 23 years old, from Charleston, Mass. I mean, this is a guy who he's been around. Yeah, he's 5'9", and Torrey Krug is 5'9" as well. And look at the weight. Grzelcyk's a little bit less of weight, 174 pounds, but
he can add mass easily.
Right. Yeah, that's not a big concern. But he's an offensive-minded player, so I wonder if when Krug does return, what they're going to do with that. Can Grzelcyk earn a spot here?
Maybe
I would like to have seen like Robbie O'Gara with the team potentially over Grzelcyk. I like Grzelcyk a lot. Don't get me wrong, but I think you have a very offensive-minded defensive group. Like Charlie McAvoy is an offensive-minded player. Adam McQuaid's not at all. Doesn't really know what offense is, but so that's good.
Kevin Miller's defensive.
Kevin Miller is an interesting guy because I think he's definitely more a defensive-minded player, but he has that offensive capability that Adam McQuaid doesn't have. He has
a two-way title.
Yeah, he's more two-way. And Postma made the team here. This is another guy who I thought was a fringe player, and he made that team. So
he's probably the 17th man right now.
Is he, or is Grzelcyk?
Oh, right, yeah, it's probably Grzelcyk then. You're right.
I think Postma's going to get the start.
I
think he's going to be on the active roster on Thursday. But if you want more offense, Grzelcyk is that.
Yeah.
I just question his long term with the Bruins in terms of Matt Grzelcyk because I do look at Torrey Krug and I say this is exactly the same player. They play the same play style. They have the same upside. You're paying Krug a lot of money unless you can move on from that contract somehow. So I think Grzelcyk's in an interesting situation here in Boston because obviously the league is going more offensive on that defensive side of the puck. All defenders basically have to be able to score now. So you can't really get away with. I also question like Brandon Carlo's ceiling at the same time because I'm like, can a guy who's really defensive minded really succeed anymore?
I think you can.
I think you can too, but I do question like, is he going to be considered like top tier, or is he ever going to be top tier because of that? Because you do look around the league and the way the league has progressed, that offensive minded defenseman has become the norm. Every team has multiple now of them.
Yes.
Uh, so we'll see. Chara does worry me as well. Not in the offensive
His
minded
age.
or anything like that. I just the age, right? Can he do what he did last year? Because if I think he had this, if he has the same year he had last year, I'm say that's a win.
Yeah.
I just don't. How can he continue? Like it's like Tom Brady in football. It's like how do they continue to do it? I
How
think
much
Chara's in
longer
great
can you
shape
really
right now. I just how slow can you get until you're literally feet behind players now? Because you've seen it with Char. You know he has gotten slower over the years, and obviously he has. But his stick is so long that he's able to still be in a play and be feet away.
Mm.
At one point is he's so slow that he's not even close. But I am worried. The age is it's a factor. It's always going to be a factor with players like that. But I did think he had a bounce back year last year. Uh, and obviously when you're 6'9" and can move around, it's pretty good. Uh, 6'9" without skates, mind you. So
Yes. 7.
Brendan Carlo is actually 6'5". Surprising.
Yeah.
I know
Big
Carlo
kid.
was tall, but 6'5" is impressively tall. Taller than Adam Quaid, who's 6'4". Looking at the goaltending unit here to kind of finish up this opening day roster, you have Anton Khudobin and you have Tuukka Rask. I don't know how I feel about that. Rask, I feel confident in, but
Mm-hmm.
when he gets over a certain game limit or game played per year, his play goes down considerably, and I think that'll
Way
hurt
down.
you. If you think you are a playoff team, or you think you're going to have key games at the end of the year that you're going to need to win, you're going to need to keep Rask's games played number down.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if Khudobin's going to be that. Last year at times he was. What was it for the longest time? He only had like one win as a goaltender.
Yeah.
Anton Khudobin and like a ton of opportunities. Like they lost almost every game he played. It was absolutely bonkers. Actually, how many games they lost? Looking at it last year, he ended up winning 7 games. He only started 14. He was 7-6, which I didn't even think it was that much.
Because he got pulled from a couple of them.
Right. Oh yeah, no, he definitely did. I know Rask ended up going in a ton of games. Let me look at Rask. But if you do like Anton Khudobin doesn't really blow me out of the water, and I think they've had a lot of subpar backup play for the last couple of seasons at least, and I think it's really killed him down the stretch.
Their backups have just been too streaky,
Right.
Win, 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 and then the next 3 starts they get is complete trash. They're just inconsistent.
Right.
Which obviously is the whole idea of a backup is kind of a veteran, consistent player that can.
I don't look at it like that, actually. I look at a goaltender, a backup goaltender, as a younger player who kind of pokes the ass of the other player, which I think Rask is kind of really lacked of. Yeah, it's nice to have a veteran back there, but if that veteran's not that good, what's the point?
Okay.
Like Khudobin's fine. I ultimately think he's fine. I mean, he started 14 or 15 games last year, or he appeared in 15 games. That's not bad, but you need a little bit more. And there were some games where, was he injured for a period or something happened where he had McIntyre playing a couple games? And
Would you rather see McIntyre as a backup then?
no, I think so. McIntyre's tough. I still think he needs time in Providence. I know he's had some time in Providence and he has played at the NHL level, but I think he would be better off getting more of a starting role with a team down in Providence than playing in 50. Say he plays in 20 games to the Boston Bruins. I don't think that's enough to really make him take that step forward that he needs because I don't think he's there yet. But I think they're pretty high on him. But
We're
There's
stuck
one.
with Khudobin.
There's only one. The starting goaltender for the Boston Bruins future is actually already in the system.
Daniel Vladimir.
Not Darth Flatter. Darth Darth Flatter is already in the system.
Oh, I like that.
Darth Flatter is going to
That's
be
totally going to be his nickname.
right.
He makes the club. It's
I mean,
going to be Bruins.
you have Rask locked up for so many years, but I think if you look at the current Bruins goaltending depth, I do look at Vladder and say, oh, this guy might be your backup in the next couple seasons, and he might be the guy that kind of Tim Thomas's that situation where Rask took over Tim Thomas's job.
We'll see.
I haven't seen Rask's play decline to the point where that's even a possibility. I think Rask owns this job, and I don't think he could lose this job in terms of starting goaltender for the foreseeable future. McIntyre, I've seen him play a decent amount between Providence and Boston at this point, and I can say he has something, but do I see flashes of like brilliance out of him? Not so sure yet. Do I think he could be a starting goaltender? I don't know that yet. I think he could be a backup. I just think this year Khudobin probably right now is your best option because you didn't bring anything in that's real.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately. And I don't think McIntyre did enough in camp or even in preseason to earn that backup role to take it away because it was Khudobin's to lose, and Khudobin didn't do enough to lose it.
Pretty much.
So maybe it is Vladder in the future. But I look at Tuukka Rask, and for the next couple of years at least, he's your starting goaltender, like it or not. And I think he's been pretty good. And if your defense gets better in front of you, you should be even better. You just question some of the players you have on defense because McAvoy is going to be a rookie. How many issues are going to pop up there? Carlo, I know he played a good amount last season, but he also missed a ton of time. So I still look at Carlo and say, oh, there's going to be some rookie mistakes here, even though it's his second year, because he missed that time. So you have some young players in front of you, some guys who, if Grzelcyk's out, they're on the ice to start the year. There's not going to be much defense coming. He makes comments all the time. He's made comments when he's been questioned about it that he makes an effort to play defense because that's his job. So. But offense, that his mind jumps to offense. So when he makes a comment where he's like, "Oh, I make an effort to play defense," well, that's your job. No shit, play defense.
I think that's his best way of answering those.
No, it is. I get it.
Like, oh, can you actually play defense? And he can't say, yeah, that's my job. Of course, I play defense. I do it for a living. But
right, but
he kind of says the next best thing. But I know where you're coming from. Where it's weird when you hear a defenseman say, "I try and play defense."
Like, no, he makes an effort to play. It's like, I'm glad you're making an effort, but this is what you should be focused on. Because I look at Grzelcyk, and obviously, they're working on it, but how can you be a defenseman? It's crazy to me that their forte isn't defense. Like, that's where we're coming to in the NHL, where you look at a guy like Torrey Krug and say the best thing he does is not defense. And if he couldn't play a forward because he's not talented enough to be a forward.
Correct.
So it's like these interesting guys who are now playing as defensemen, but they're not good enough to really be a defenseman, and they're not good enough to be a forward. So they're kind of like this hybrid player, which I think is wild because in the NHL, like 20 to 30 years ago, those players wouldn't even be on the roster.
Except for Bobby Orr.
Yeah, but that was different because Bobby Orr could play defense at a level where a Norris Trophy winner, and then he could also play.
He did win the Norris like 5 times.
So he was both. I mean, that's why he's a Hall of Famer. That's why one of the greatest players of all time is Bobby Orr could play an all-star level defense, and then he could also play an all-star level forward.
He has more goals than Matt Bolesky.
That's not that hard.
He's got more goals than Jimmy Hayes.
But when people say Charlie McAvoy is like the next Bobby Orr, it's like,
that's ridiculous.
Oh, come on. Like, slow down. Give the kid a break. Bobby Orr was an all-star forward and an all-star defender. Like, he did both at an elite level. Charlie McAvoy will never be that kind of player. I hope he's great. I hope he's an all-star, but he's never going to be Bobby Orr. And I don't think he even thinks about that. He shouldn't. You can't. Is he the next Ray Bork? Okay. Maybe
that's a better comparison.
But that's still a really good player. But
but
if you're talking
more realistic.
If we're talking about a realistic like goal, maybe he's the next Ray Bork. That's good. That's a good goal.
I mean,
Bobby,
Yeah, comparing him to it's like calling McAvoy the next, not McAvoy, sorry, McDavid the next Wayne Gretzky.
Or it's like calling McDavid the next Sidney Crosby. It's like,
Yeah,
no.
the same thing.
I know.
Even better.
Like,
I know they play together, but yeah, they just you can't. A player can't be a different player.
no, it's you can have comparisons for sure. Like you can have a comp. Like Matt Grzelcyk's comp is literally Torrey Krug.
Yeah,
So you can have a comparison, but you can then compare
McDavid
the
is
player like to compare the player with an all-time great is just it's not fair.
yeah.
Use a better
Not fair to
comparison.
him. Yeah, not fair to
Let's
them because
think
he
of an
puts
active
pressure on them.
player. Let's think of an active player that you can compare Charlie McAvoy to.
Duncan Keith, Drew Doughty,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Crystal Pang.
Yeah. That's fair.
Those are 3 guys. I mean, obviously, they're all stars and they're potential Hall of Famers in the future.
Right, but if Charlie so at this point, the amount of hype that's been around Charlie McAvoy, unfortunately for him, I think he actually has to be like an all-star player one day.
Unfortunately, but let's hope it doesn't get to him like it does some players.
Some players, yep. Some players, it's tough. But I think in Boston, they get unfair. I think a guy like Tyler Seguin was set up to fail here. Turns out he's actually a really good player. A guy like Dougie Hamilton was set up to fail in Boston.
You have to expect mistakes from these kids. I mean, McAvoy's what, 20? He's not even old enough to drink in the United States. And you call him the next Bobby Orr, or whatever you want to call him.
Yeah, I got the next Gary Cheevers for you though.
Give the kid a break. He's gonna make mistakes. But what makes him great is his ability to learn from it. Like when you see the players go back on the bench, you see them slamming their sticks because they, made a bad pass or something. You know that kid's gonna go out there and he's never gonna do it again. He learned.
You hope.
It's the kids that you see that do it over and over and over again.
Ryan Spooner.
Why are you doing? Oh my God! There you go. But yeah, but
he's not even a kid anymore. Ryan Spooner's been in the league for what, 4 years now?
Yeah.
He's 25. Like, he's still young. You want to know who else is 25? Kyrie Irving. He's a superstar. Sorry, Ryan. Sorry. That is unfair to Spooner a little bit. Not everybody can be a 25-year-old superstar. But
well, that's because some people are just freaks in the nicest way possible.
Yep, and Daniel or Darth Flatter will be a freak one day.
You think so?
He's like 6'9". He's like Darth Flatter is going to be the next. He takes up the entire net. He's massive.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. This guy is massive.
Is he bigger than Nashville? Rene?
He's 6'5". Okay, so Vladar is 6'5". He's 6'5". He's from the Czech Republic. But 6'5" for a goaltender? That's pretty big.
He stands 5 inches above the net.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna look at. I don't have Rask.
Rask is 6'3" or 6'4".
So you talk about 3 inches taller than Rask.
Yeah.
I mean, that's massive. That's what you need. That is what. If you're talking about like one of the best goaltenders in the league, they're all like 6'5" now.
Yeah. The guy from Nashville. What's his name?
Right, Pecorino, who's become
6'5",
a really good,
6'6".
Really good player, just taking up the entire net.
Yeah.
Bishop,
Ben Bishop.
Right, Ben Bishop, another one. But I think people have actually fallen out of favor with those. I think a lot of people see through those kind of goaltenders because they're not essentially elite in talent. Because Pecorino has these flashes of perceived greatness, but there's been some really bad moments with him. You're going to get that at a lot of goaltenders, but I don't know if you're going to have a Hall of Fame goaltender who's like 6'5", if that makes sense. I think it's tough, too, to show off your talent when you take up the entire net. There's not much really to flash. You're just the big body. Yeah, I think Vladar is the best goaltender prospect they have. I really do. I think they couldn't have him on the team this year. They had to move him back, but
he's only 18 or 19, so
yeah, wouldn't that be fantastic?
That's
this guy's your backup goaltender.
Too young for goalies. Goalies don't really reach their prime till like 26.
Right. So you got
Fortunately,
that's why it's great when you're talking about Flatter because you're talking about the post Ras goaltender. That's what you're
which he
talking
get
about.
that,
Which he could
and
be. He could
yeah,
be your next starting goaltender, which McIntyre probably not,
no
based on
no
the
pressure,
window.
Vladimir. No pressure, Darth. No pressure. Just
But if you look at the window, he's realistically could be.
he fit the
Obviously, you could have like a 28-year-old be the guy, but Vladder to me is the guy that fits the window and has shown that there's a ton of potential there, a ton of talent there, and there's a ton of room for growth. Where, like, if you look at Zane McIntyre, I think he's going to have
he's a
kind of like
backup.
right, but is he going to be a starter? Because he is 25 years old already. In theory, nearing his prime, goaltender is obviously, like you mentioned, it's generally a little later, but
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about a 25-year-old. Look at Matt Murray of the Pittsburgh Penguins, who's won a Stanley Cup,
Two.
two Stanley Cups now, and he was 21 when he won the first one. He was 23 years old, and I'm not saying McIntyre won't be anything, but we're at the point now where you need to see his prime,
Make
and
it or
if
break it.
right, he hasn't shown that he's going to be a starter, and maybe he'll be a backup, maybe he'll grow into a starting role. But it's now or never with him, I think. This season's going to be really big for his career because he has to have the breakout and he has to get that opportunity. And I think a guy like Khudobin is just a roadblock in his way right now. It is interesting, though, when you talk about their goaltenders because, Malcolm Subban was 23.
He's crap.
And yeah, he effectively was. And, we started off the show and one of the first topics we talked about, the first three topics we talked about was how they wasted him and how they didn't get any kind of return or at least protect Colin Miller with him. They didn't do any of that. And you have to wonder, maybe they really thought that he was going to prove something to them in camp, but it never happened. And
That's
now he's gone for
exactly what
nothing.
the thought process was.
And what would Colin Miller have been on this team this year?
We'll never know.
Where would he have fit? And that's kind of like where I go to as well is where would he have actually have played? Now, I'm not sure there was a spot for him. What, you're not going to play McAvoy because Colin Miller, or what would have happened there? So when you look at Colin Miller, like, did he actually fit though with what they were trying to do? He was young, but I'm not sure if he would have had a defined role with the team. And they get a lot of older, like McQuaid. To me, like at this point, I try to move on from him. I know you have a couple years in the contract, but
Should have moved on a couple of years ago.
right, I would have let him go. A veteran player, I love the way he plays and gets injured all the time, and I think
Exactly. That's the problem.
I'd rather have had a younger player there, kind of like a prove it player, because you know what you have out of McQuaid. He's the third
Rob
pairing guy.
O'Gara.
Right. I have issues when you have players who you know what you're going to get. These players have reached their potential. They've shown you their ceiling. They've done all of that. And you're like, all right, these players can play, but they're not great. They're not that good. And there might be a better option. There might be a younger option who may not be as good in the moment, but has the potential to be better. That's what I like to see. And that's why I look at a guy like Ryan Spooner and I'm like, I think he's set his peak. And I think you can get the same production out of a lot of other players.
Riley Nash.
Right. But I also think Riley Nash has shown you his ceiling as well. And I think he is a better player than Ryan Spooner. But I do think that Ryan's. So this is like the craziness in me is like, oh, the Bruins must know something with Ryan Spooner that they've paid him the money, $2.8 million, and they're keeping him around. They must know something. They must believe he has a better ceiling. But that's why I don't think Nash is a good comparison for Ryan Spooner because I think Nash has already shown you what he is. I think like a Noel Chari or an Austin Zarnik is a good comparison. Obviously, Zarnik's injured, so can't play right now. But I think that would have been better. Like maybe they could have gotten that time or JFK. Like it blows my mind because what I saw from him and up until this point is the kid should be with the team. Like
He'll be a first call up on the first.
To me it's weird. I think they've committed to the wrong players in certain positions. I think Don Sweeney and Cam Neely and I think the Jacobs family is stupid. I think they are dumb because
Oh, I
You
think
always
so
hear them
too.
talk. What was the ultimatum they gave Claude Julien? You have to make the playoffs. Like, have you seen our roster? Have you seen our team? You expect a deep playoff run out of this shit? No.
Exactly.
Do they know hockey? Do they have
They,
any
they,
idea what a hockey team is? Because
they know money.
they're stupid people. Yeah, and they've committed. The Delaware North Group is committed to building this around. Great. I don't care. I don't care about the Delaware North Group. Do you know hockey? They made the ultimatum last camp to Claude Julien. This team has to make the playoffs and make a deep playoff run. It's like, have you seen other teams in the league? Have you seen the roster? Do you know anything about the sport? Because obviously they made a comment publicly. So maybe they don't really believe that comment, but dude, they got no idea what they're doing. That
No,
ownership. And I believe, like in my head right now, the more I think about it, I think they are scared. They are scared to go all in on the youth movement because there are players right now you look at and you're like, what are they trying to do?
they're holding on to a couple pieces.
They are going young. They're going crazy young.
Not
Um,
enough though. Is it enough?
I think it's a good start, but I still question it. Like Matt Bolesky, are you kidding me? Like
That's
what are you doing here? You want to go young. I get that. I still think you're going to make the playoffs this year. I think you still have to make the playoffs with the roster you have. Because I think the NHL is pretty open in that aspect. Because who had the Nashville Predators going to the Stanley Cup Finals last year? Nobody did.
no.
So I think anything can happen in the NHL, which I think is great. I love that about it. There's certain teams you can always pencil in, like Pittsburgh, but for the most part, it's so open. So like, if you look at the Bruins, I just think they're confused still. I think they've gotten less confused, if that makes sense. I think they've kind of gone in their head like Sweeney has said, I want to go young, but they're not fully committed to it because that bottom six has some older players in it, some really older players. And I think that Backus signing was really confusing last year because it totally messed everything up. Where it's like, are you committing to young players? What are you trying to do? 6 million, third line, where's he fit? Like, they don't really know what they're doing. I don't think they were knowing what they're doing. And maybe it isn't Cam, maybe it isn't Don, maybe it's the Jacobs. Because publicly those comments last year, what what did they make you think? Because I think I've ranted on a little bit, but what did that make you think when they said you could have a deep playoff run? That was
I
prior to last season.
I thought there was no way in hell that was going to happen with that roster. I mean, like you said, you look at the other teams around the league and you go, they're better than us. They're better than us. They're better. You go down almost every team except maybe Buffalo Sabres. But even then, you're like, we're not that much better than they are. So at
Right.
that time, and then it's like getting a coach like that, who I mean, won you a Stanley Cup, took you to another one, and lost in a really stupid way. But I mean, took you to two Stanley Cups, took you to the playoffs like almost every year, and then after what, like one, 2 bad years, you're like, oh, okay, now that's it. You have to go make the Stanley Cup again and leave. It's just
Well, my issue with the Bruins is that they never broke it down, right? They never really truly deconstructed their roster because they had so much money tied up into these long-term deals that they couldn't pull in Edmonton and literally go to the basement of the league and get the number one overall pick. They couldn't do that.
9 times in a row.
Right. The Bruins couldn't do that because they had been an annual Stanley Cup contender, a playoff team, one of the best teams in the league. They had been that
Mm-hmm.
for several years in a row. They had sustained success. So they had locked up into good players. So they were in a tough situation where they barely missed the playoffs 2 seasons in a row. And you had the ultimatum last year from the Jacobs, and they were in a tough situation, admittedly, that they had all this money locked up. They had a bunch of good players, so they couldn't move those players off their roster. So they couldn't go to the basement. So that's why they were in such a weird transition period. But if you think about it, the way Sweeney has been able to kind of build a team without going to the basement has actually been outstanding.
It has.
They didn't go to the basement whatsoever. They had 2 years they missed the playoffs, but if you remember, it came down to like the last game.
Yeah,
Both
it
those
was
years.
it was barely missed the playoffs. It wasn't missed it by
Right. They
30
were a
points.
play. Yeah, you could have said they could have made the playoffs there. They should have made the playoffs there. They certainly should have, at least the year where Tuukka Rask ate some spicy wings the night before the game. Uh,
And it wasn't shown in that sense.
right. And it wasn't shown on Nesson because game one of 162 was more important than,
Game 82.
game 82 of the NHL season where you have to win, and if you don't, you miss the playoffs. Maybe that's why. Maybe Nesson Maybe the Boston Red Sox killed that Bruins team. But look, they did go down to the basement, so that's impressive to me. There was no basement performance from this Bruins team, and now you're looking at all these young players and like, wow, they did a really good job here. Uh, I still think ownership is meddling. Maybe there is a situation where the Jacobs have said, hey, you got to make a run here, and then Sweeney's like, shit, no, I can't move on from Matt Bolesky, and maybe the trades aren't there to do so, but they put Dennis Seidenberg on waivers with an incredible amount of money left on his deal. They put Jimmy Hayes on waivers. So they're not afraid to put money on waivers. They're not afraid to pay people to not be on the team.
Maybe they're keeping him. Maybe they're thinking Bolesky has a good first half and then they trade him.
Maybe we'll see what happens here. I know that's kind of what's interesting with this team, but I would have liked to see them go a little bit younger in certain positions. And I think that's a fair criticism. And I think questioning the ownership and their commitment to the team and the fact that they're named the Delaware North Group is also a really good criticism of them. Because that actually irritates me, and it must irritate a lot of fans when they're like, "Oh, the Delaware North Group." Like, and I do think Bruins fans are actually one of the smarter fan groups out of all the fan bases in Boston, because I can imagine. And I think when they actually made those comments, when the Jacobs said you got to that ultimatum they gave prior to last season, I think a lot of fans were just like, "What are you talking about?" So fans are smart for the Bruins. I think that's what I like about it. I like about hockey is that there's not that many fans, but the fans that are here, they're knowledgeable of the sport, and that's way different than any other team. So I think for this Bruins season, there's not going to be any casual hockey fans because there aren't any casual hockey fans. You have to be a legit fan to watch this sport. There are so many intricacies of the game, the way it's played, the rules, all of that. The way the goaltenders play, it's an interesting game to watch. And with the season opening up to me, with this Bruins team, there's so much excitement, there's so much youth.
It's gonna be a lot of fun.
And you know what? I watch the Boston Celtics, and I will watch them this season. But between the two teams, obviously two completely different spectrums here, right? But the Bruins to me are finally ticking back up. They're finally getting that excitement level. And I thought it started last year. When they Carlo and then Pasternak had a great year. Then at the end of the year, brought in McAvoy to the fold for the playoffs and all of that. So I thought it started to tick back up. But this year, you're going to get a whole year of these young players. And it truly is exciting. And I think they will be a more exciting team to watch on a night in, night out basis than the Boston Celtics. And they're completely different sports. You can't compare them, but they play in the same building.
Yeah.
And I really do think that the Bruins are going to be more exciting to watch.
You're going to see
there's young players.
You're going to see a completely different pace out of the Bruins team.
You're going to,
more faster, quick, a lot
faster, quick, more offense, more young players. And these young players, like McAvoy, like Anders Bjork, like Jake DeBrusk, they're getting real minutes, real playing time. So you're going to be able to see these players a ton. There's nowhere to hide them because they don't have that veteran depth like they used to have. This is going to be a different Boston Bruins team. I hope to God that they can win hockey games to start the year, because I am slightly worried that it all just falls apart over like the first month and then they're going to do something drastic.
Oh, boy.
I think it's going to be important to at least open up the first couple months at like 500, at least like play winning hockey. Because if they're really bad, I could see them flipping a switch here, doing something crazy. But they need to go young. And I think they've done that. Could they be younger? Sure. But it's going to be exciting. So I want predictions as we end up here, Justin. Predictions, not for the season. We've done that. Predictions for the first week. And more importantly, the opening night game against Nashville. This is going to be a tough opponent.
I'm going to say it's going to be very competitive. I think it's going to be a 1-goal game. I don't know. I think maybe like 3-2. 3-2.
Okay. So
I think going like
word.
Yeah. Not a lot, but not like a 1-0 game. I think it's going to be a battle. I think they're going to be able to compete. I don't think the Bruins want to come out first game of the season and just be embarrassed by the team from Tennessee, where they can barely post ice during most of the year.
Right. So it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening for me. Because I am looking at this. You got what Nick Bonino is making his debut for Nashville. Missed the 4 games of the Stanley Cup, last 4 games with a broken leg as the Pittsburgh Penguins won. So you're going to see Nick Bonino as a Nashville Predator for the first time in the regular season. You're seeing a Nashville team that I look at, and I look at their defense, and it is absolutely stunning. The level of depth they have at that defensive unit. Uh, like I said earlier in the show, PK Subban is probably their third best defenseman on that team. We'll see what happens. I think you might be close. 3-2 is not bad. I think if you're Boston, if you look at your matchups here, I think you have a better forward group than Nashville here. But Nashville does have some really good players, and they're young and they're defensive and they can play all over the ice. And I don't think it was a fluke. I think that's what a lot of the questions were. Was last year's Nashville Predator team a fluke? I don't think they were. And I think they're actually going to be a better team than they were last year. I think adding Nick Bonino is great. He's a good role player to have on your team. And I think they have some young forwards as well, and everyone's taking a step forward. And PK Subban, it's another year he's in that system, and I don't think Pekka is that great, but I don't think the Bruins win. I think they're going to lose on opening night, and I think I'm going to pick them to lose a lot to start the year. And I know it's kind of weird, but if Bergeron's, put it this way, if Patrice Bergeron is not in skates, not suited up to play, you lose that game tomorrow night. On Thursday, you're losing the opener for sure. That's how pivotal he is. If you have Ryan Spooner skating on that first line, quote unquote, it's game over. You might as well just leave the ice at that point.
It's not that bad.
Right, but I think they'll lose. If Bergeron's there, I'm confident in it being a close game. But if Bergeron's not there, they're going to get blown out. I really do. They have so many young players. It's under the bright lights. Will they all step up? Will they crap their pants? I have no idea. But I think Nashville wasn't a fluke, and either they're going to have the hangover this year, or they're going to open up their season strong, and they're going to send a message to the rest of the league that we're here to stay. We're the Nashville Predators, and we're a good hockey team. And I think that's what they're going to do in opening night against the Bruins. I think Nashville wins. I'm not going to be a homer. Not going to be a homer about it.
Less than 12 hours, so we'll see. Or 24 hours. Sorry,
less than 12 hours. Like, no.
Less than 24.
It's like 24. So this is like the interesting thing. And obviously we're a Boston Bruins podcast and all of that. But to open the year with the day that they have it on is just brutal. For TV
I forgot about that.
Not just for TV ratings, but like for fan interest. Like, you have such an exciting team, so you're not going head to head with the Celtics. You're going head to head with 2 other teams in your town. Granted, the Red Sox are starting at 4:30, I believe. They're really? Game 1 of the ALDS, so that's good. That's smart. They didn't put it at the same time.
I won't watch the Red Sox regardless, but
it's a play. There's no interesting about the Red Sox, but in theory, the Red Sox game should be ending around the start of the Bruins game. In theory. Right. Good thing it's not on Nesson, because game 1 of the Bruins would be pushed to Nesson Plus. But no, the issue I see, like, is so brutal because you have the Patriots playing the Buccaneers.
No, they don't play till like 9:30.
8:30. So the Bruins will have
8:30 might as well be 9:30 in football.
The Bruins will have an hour window here to really show fans. But I think if you're interested in the Bruins this year, you're a hardcore fan. I don't think you're going to have a casual fan interested in the team. There's no polarizing star player for the Boston yet. I mean, there's players that could be developed into it, but there's no player that you look at and be like, wow, I'm turning the TV on for him. But I think it's been that way for a couple of years, and I think hockey's tough like that. Not every team has like a Ovechkin or a Crosby or a Connor McDavid. Not every team has that kind of player. But I think it's going to be the hardcore fans, because I think the average sports fan won't turn it on this year unless something exciting happens. I think this is going to be especially the case this year. But we'll see. It's going to be tough opening up with the Patriots playing on that night and the Red Sox playing in the afternoon, you're not going to get any casual fan crossover in my mind. You might get some casual fans who are returning to Nesson and be like, "Oh, the Red Sox post game on Nesson today." Nope. Oh, it's the Bruins. So we'll see. But I think for the casual fan, this is not your year for the Boston Bruins. Granted, I don't think there's that many casual hockey fans. Unless you go to the TD Garden and you see about 80% of the place with casual fans, which is unfortunate. But that's every sport. Have you ever been you've been to Fenway Park, obviously. That's like the
Yeah,
worst. That is the worst. The Red Sox have the worst fan base in terms of actually having fans at the game.
yeah. I think when I go, I think every time the ball hits the bat, everyone stands up and thinks there's a home
Oh,
run. It's an
it's not
infield
just
fly.
that. You hear them talk at Fenway, and you're like, "Wow, you're a bunch of morons." But let's sing "Sweet Caroline" down 8-1. Yeah, great. There's real Red Sox fans don't go to Red Sox games. For the Bruins, it's more mixed. I think there's a ton of real Bruins fans
Yeah,
that go to games.
there's less of that with the Bruins.
Yeah, that's why I like the Bruins fan base way more. I've
You have
kind of
to
had
actually pay attention to hockey.
right. I've had the pleasure of covering a couple of the teams as like a reporter and all of that, and being around some of the fans and dealing with them on Twitter and all of that. And I think Bruins fans are the realest fans. I think they have the
Besides
strongest.
Celtics.
No, 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 no.
You don't think so? You think
No,
Bruins are better than
no, no,
Celtics?
no, no, no. The Celtics are insane. I mean, we were getting fed Rondo is the greatest point guard of all time crap for years. And then you had Celtics fans last year saying, oh, no, Isaiah is the greatest of all time. And now that
Oh,
you have
okay.
Kyrie Irving, they're like, Isaiah sucked. It's like Celtics fans are the biggest green teamers who, on
Okay.
average, aren't. So with the Bruins fans, they're the exact
Aren't afraid to
opposite
say
of
they
a
suck.
Celtics fan.
Yeah.
The Bruins fans are extremely negative about their team on
Mm-hmm.
average. Not saying,
Just look
but
at us.
yeah, I'm very negative about the team.
Same.
Usually very negative.
A little
But
less. I'm
I
a
like
little
what
less.
they're doing this year. What they are trying to do. But like the Celtics fans are like, oh, they're so everything is awesome all the time. Danny couldn't do anything wrong. No, no, God forbid he failed to make that trade. No, look, the Bruins fans, I love them because they're negative and I like being negative.
Mm-hmm.
I love when you can be negative. There's not too much positivity around the team. And I don't think any Bruins fan is saying we're going to win the Stanley Cup this year. We're going to go to a Stanley Cup. There's no one in Boston, I think, for a Bruins fan that's saying that.
I'll say it right now.
Every other team in this town, except the Revolution, so I'll say except them. But every other team, I think you're going to find a bunch of fans who are like they're going to win the World Series. I think for the Red Sox, who I think have no shot to win the ALDS, I think there's fans right now who are saying they're going to win the World Series. It's like, nope. For the Celtics, like every Celtics fan's like, oh, they're gonna beat the Cavaliers and beat the Gold State Warriors. It's like, are they?
No.
No, Bruins fans are realistic, and that's what I like about it.
We'll have to wait till tomorrow night.
And we'll find out. No, people are either probably listening to this on Thursday, so you'll find out tonight if the Bruins are actually going to win a hockey game. And this could go really, like I said it earlier, this could go south so quickly because say they lose like 5 straight games to open, like you could realistically see them lose a ton of games to start the year. I mean, I could. I don't know, but is all these forwards going to pan out? You have so many rookies, and are they going to do well under the bright lights? It's a lot of factors going in, and that's what makes it exciting. You have no idea how they're going to do. Anybody who gives you a Bruins season prediction, guess what? They're lying. They have no idea. So I guess if we've given a prediction, we're just lying. We have no idea. Thanks for listening, watching, subscribing. Make sure to share. Give us comments, questions, all of that. We're hoping to have a third host on soon. We had a third host to start the year, but he like punched himself in the jaw or got mugged. I have no idea. He broke his jaw. Joe broke his jaw. So he's hopefully mid-October, I think he said. Which
he's on the IR right now.
Yeah, he's on the I. We put him on the IR. He's sitting over there having a beer with Torrey Krug. And he should be back soon. Actually, interesting note. They both have jaw injuries.
Oh.
You know what? I know we saw Torrey Krug's injury, but what if Joe was the one who committed it, and then Torrey Krug came over and knocked him right in the face? So yeah, they both have jaw injuries. So he's drinking a beer with Torrey Krug right now, and he should be back actually around the time Torrey Krug is going to return. And if he doesn't, we will give him shit for it. We'll be like, Torrey Krug returned. Where are you? Yeah. Any other thoughts, closing remarks for the season opener, Justin?
Let's hope they can be fun to watch.
Yeah, that's all I hope for is actually that they're entertaining to watch and we don't get too many high above the ice comments on Essen. So that's it.